Over the weekend, President Donald Trump made headlines by proposing a $2,000 payment to most Americans, funded by tariffs. This bold move has sparked a wave of discussions across the nation, with many wondering how it will impact their daily lives and the broader economy. For many struggling with rising costs, this sounds like a lifeline: money for bills, groceries, or savings. Families across the country are feeling the pinch of rising prices, and this proposed payment could provide much-needed relief. Imagine being able to pay off that overdue bill, or finally having enough to stock up on essentials without worry. The plan echoes the pandemic stimulus checks, but this time, the funding would come from tariffs on imports, not government borrowing. This approach aims to leverage international trade to support domestic needs, a strategy that has its own set of complexities and potential repercussions. This distinction is fueling debate in Washington, especially as inflation remains a top concern. Lawmakers are divided on whether this tariff-funded payment is a viable solution or just a temporary fix that could lead to other economic issues down the line. With elections approaching, the proposal is both an economic policy and a political message: direct relief for families. Politicians are keenly aware that their stance on this issue could influence voters, making this proposal a hot topic on the campaign trail. But is it realistic, or just a headline-grabbing promise? Experts and lawmakers are already scrutinizing the details. They are examining the feasibility of funding such a large payment through tariffs and the potential long-term effects on the economy. Over the coming weeks, we'll break down the numbers and hear from those who know the system best. We'll explore the economic theories behind the proposal, the political motivations driving it, and the real-world implications for everyday Americans. This story is about more than just a check. It's about trade, politics, and your wallet. Stay tuned as we delve deeper into the $2,000 promise and what it means for you and the future of the American economy. Let's break down two key terms that are often mentioned in the news but can be confusing: tariffs and dividends. Understanding these concepts is crucial because they can have a direct impact on your wallet, your job, and even the prices you see at the store. A tariff is essentially a tax placed on goods that are brought into the United States from other countries. Imagine you're buying a product that was made overseas. Before it even reaches the shelves, the government adds a fee to it. This fee is usually paid by the importer, but it often gets passed along to you, the consumer, in the form of higher prices. So when you see imported goods costing more, tariffs are often the reason why. The main idea behind tariffs is to make foreign products more expensive, so that American-made goods become more attractive to buyers. This is supposed to encourage people to support local businesses and help protect jobs here at home. In theory, it's a way to strengthen the domestic economy by giving American companies a competitive edge. Every year, the U.S. government collects billions of dollars from these tariffs. This money goes straight into the federal treasury, adding to the government's revenue. But what happens to all that cash after it's collected? President Trump's proposal is to take a portion of this tariff revenue and return it to the American people in the form of a dividend. The idea is that, since tariffs are supposed to benefit the country, the profits should be shared with its citizens. In the world of investing, a dividend is a payment made to shareholders from a company's profits. In this case, the American people are being treated like shareholders in the nation's economy. The government collects money from tariffs and then distributes a share of that money back to you. Think of it as a cycle. The U.S. collects fees from imported goods, and then some of that money is funneled back to citizens. It's a way of saying, you're part of this country's success, so you deserve a piece of the profit. On paper, it sounds simple. Tariff revenue comes in, and a portion is shared with the public, almost like a national bonus. The hope is that this extra money could help families pay bills, save for the future, or just have a little more financial breathing room. But in reality, the process is much more complicated. Who exactly qualifies to receive this dividend? Will every American get the same amount, or will it depend on income, family size, or other factors? And how much money is actually available to distribute? After all, tariffs can fluctuate year to year, and the government has many other expenses to cover. The amount each person receives might not be as large as it sounds. There are also trade-offs to consider. While some people might benefit from the dividend, others could end up paying more for everyday goods. Businesses that rely on imported materials might face higher costs, which could lead to job losses or price increases elsewhere. So, while the promise of sharing tariff revenue with the public is appealing, actually making it work is a complex challenge. There are many details to figure out, and the impact could vary widely from person to person. As we dig deeper into this idea, keep in mind that what sounds straightforward in a speech or on paper can become tangled in real-world details. Policies like this often have ripple effects that aren't obvious at first glance. So let's take a closer look at how this plan could play out in practice, and what it might mean for you and your community. President Trump announced the $2,000 dividend on social media, framing it as a reward for Americans, funded by tariffs. He said high-income earners would be excluded, targeting the benefit to middle and lower-income families. Any leftover funds, he claimed, would go toward paying down the national debt. The message: tariffs aren't just trade tools, they're a source of direct cash for citizens. This direct-to-public announcement is classic Trump, bypassing traditional channels and sparking immediate debate. The promise is simple and aspirational, but the details remain vague. The administration set the stage for a national conversation, before the logistics were even clear. Soon after Trump's announcement, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent offered a more cautious take. He admitted he hadn't discussed the plan directly with the president, raising doubts about how concrete the proposal really is. Bessent suggested the dividend might not be a check at all, it could be tax cuts or other benefits. He emphasized that tariffs are meant to rebalance trade, not fund public payments. This contradicts the president's framing and adds confusion. Is this a real payment, or just a rebranding of existing policies? The mixed messages leave Americans wondering what, if anything, will actually materialize. The policy is still in flux, with no unified message from the White House. Who would actually get the money? Trump's announcement only said, "not high-income people," leaving the cutoff unclear. Past stimulus checks went to individuals earning up to $75,000 and couples up to $150,000, with payments phasing out above those limits. If similar rules apply, most middle and working-class families would qualify, but where the cutoff lands will affect both the cost and the political impact. Congress would need to define eligibility, likely sparking intense debate over income limits and who counts as a dependent. For now, Americans are left guessing if they'd be on the list. The big question: is there enough money? Last year, the U.S. collected about $195 billion in tariffs. Sending $2,000 to every eligible American could cost $300 billion or more. That's a shortfall of over $100 billion. Tariff revenue alone can't cover it. Even using all tariff revenue since Trump took office, the plan still falls short. The math doesn't work unless the payment is reduced, eligibility is tightened, or the government borrows more, contradicting the promise to lower the debt. This financial gap is a major obstacle. The administration could cut the payment, restrict eligibility, or borrow. None are easy options. As it stands, the plan is financially unworkable. The numbers just don't add up. Economists are sounding the alarm, warning that injecting hundreds of billions of dollars into the economy could have serious consequences, especially when it comes to inflation. They point out that such a massive influx of cash doesn't just disappear, it circulates, often driving up prices across the board. The concern is that this kind of stimulus, while popular with the public, can have unintended side effects that ripple through the economy for months or even years. When more money ends up in people's pockets, it usually means higher demand for goods and services. If businesses can't keep up with that demand, because of supply chain issues or limited production, prices start to climb. This is especially true in sectors like groceries, gas, and housing, where supply is often slow to adjust. Everyday Americans feel the pinch most at the checkout line, where even small price increases add up over time. During the pandemic, stimulus checks provided crucial relief for millions of families, helping them pay bills and keep food on the table. However, the St. Louis Federal Reserve and other experts have noted that this extra spending power also played a role in the recent surge in inflation. The lesson: even well-intentioned policies can have complex, far-reaching effects. Now, with inflation finally starting to cool after months of painful price hikes, some experts worry that Trump's proposed plan could set off another round of increases. They caution that repeating the same approach could undo the progress made so far, making it harder for families to afford everyday essentials. There's also a certain irony at play here. Tariffs, which are essentially taxes on imported goods, tend to raise prices for consumers. So, the government would be handing out money to help people cope with higher costs that its own policies helped create in the first place. This cycle can be confusing and frustrating for shoppers who just want to stretch their dollars further. Many experts are skeptical, calling the plan unrealistic and warning that it's driven more by political motives than by sound economic principles. They argue that quick fixes rarely address the underlying issues and can sometimes make things worse in the long run. The real risk, they say, is that while short-term relief might feel good now, it could lead to even more pain at the checkout in the future. Rising prices can erode any gains from government payments, leaving families struggling to keep up. In the end, most economists see this proposal less as a serious policy solution and more as a political message aimed at voters. The debate continues, but the risks of fueling inflation remain front and center for those watching the economy closely. Even if the funding and inflation issues were solved, the plan faces huge hurdles in Congress and the courts. Only Congress can authorize and fund direct payments. Getting a $2,000 check bill through a divided legislature would be a major challenge. Lawmakers would debate the cost, eligibility, and inflation risks, with fierce opposition likely. Meanwhile, the Supreme Court is reviewing whether the president can use tariffs for broad economic purposes. The administration's own lawyers argue tariffs are for trade, not revenue, undermining the plan's legal foundation. If the court limits presidential tariff authority, the funding source could disappear. The legal and legislative obstacles are enormous. The plan's fate may be decided in court before it ever reaches Congress. Here's what we know. Trump promised a $2,000 payment funded by tariffs, and the idea is popular with many Americans. But the numbers don't add up, eligibility is unclear, and even the Treasury Secretary seems uncertain about the details. Congress would have to approve any payments, and a Supreme Court case could block the funding source entirely. We're waiting for a formal proposal and a court decision. Until then, this remains more promise than policy. The debate highlights America's struggle with economic pain, government aid, and political messaging. We'll keep following the story, bringing you the facts as they emerge.